Hello, this is Robert Kinsler from Music Worth Buying, and I'm here with Craig Chaquico, and I'm also here with Jim Crockett. Now we're going to start with Jim because he's the original editor and publisher of Guitar Player magazine, and he has a new collection that he's going to talk about a little bit here.
Now, what it is I'll show you right in front of it. It says, edited by Jim Crockett. I did the editing, came up with a concept. We spoke to Hal Leonard people about it. They went, and then I sort of laid plans. But my daughter, right over here, Dara Crockett, she was sort of the spirit behind this thing because I was putting off doing anything about it. 20 years of archives and cardboard boxes, and and I thought, well, I'll die and somebody will do it, and then I'm out of the loop. However, she persisted, threatened, cajoled, arm twisted, everything like that. And then, in addition to that, she also organized. And she was the one who contacted a lot of the early advertisers because I wanted advertisers in. I wanted guitar players who were featured in the book, like Craig. I wanted them to write contributions of what their experience was with the magazine. I wanted the early staff in. But that's a massive task, and I'm a busy guy. I got things to do. I kept trying to tell her that, and it didn't work. But nonetheless, Dara took over sort of the organizing and the contacting people. I may come up with a list of names, but I didn't know where anybody was. And her job was to find them and get them to send contributions of their own personal experiences, get early photographs of all the artists as well as more contemporary photographs. We got a great one of Craig when he was a little kid and had his leg smashed up, and he's in the hospital with a cast on. And he wrote one of his first songs, a one-string song for was it for the nurse?
Yeah, for my doctor, whose name was Elizabeth, and I could only reach the E string on the guitar, so it was called E Elizabeth Song, written on one string. Yeah. And shortly after that, I became a diehard fanatic reading Guitar Player magazine, as a lot of us early guitar players. That was like being on the cover of the Wheaties box. If you saw, when you saw those great players, and when you were doing it, when you first started, it was very eclectic. It wasn't like as much of a fanzine. It was more like it was like the kind of magazine you kept and looked at it like a Encyclopedia Britannica. You could go back and read articles by studio musicians, rock stars, jazz guys. It was all there. Lessons, music, tablature, how to build your own fuzz tones. I mean, it was everything we ever wanted. So
it was a true encyclopedia for guitar players.
It was indeed. It was the magazine that we all gravitated towards and worshipped. I still have my original copies that I bought myself when it was came out every 2 months. You had to wait 2 months for it, and then later to see my own subscription with my name on it because I could afford to get a subscription, and then to actually be on the cover was like this. Somebody pinched me. I mean, it's amazing to be part of it.
Yeah. Yeah, and so that's the cover with Craig, and we'll face that toward the camera. But you can actually see he's on one of the covers that's replicated here on the cover.
Then he sent in a contribution to, as I said, his early involvement in the magazine, his early connection with it, and if it mattered anything, that issue was any particularly good, or was it a failure?
Talk a little bit about why you and how you decided to start publishing the magazine.
All right. I was the first full-time employee, but the magazine existed on a small scale in 1967. That was the first issue, this one that's shown right here. I joined it in 1970, but it was started by a gentleman named Bud Eastman, who was a pedal steel player and a great lover of guitar, and he had a guitar store, and he and his wife fostered guitar in their small communities in Northern California. And he was a dead believer in the education of guitar. But he didn't know much about how to make a magazine. He wanted a magazine. He started, as I say, this one. They put out the early issues that Craig referred to. A few of those, I think maybe initially 3 or 4 a year, and then they did 6 times a year. But Bud also knew that magazines were out of his area of expertise and his experience and knowledge. Guitar was, but he needed somebody to actually do a magazine.
I see, okay.
And so he ran a little ad, a little 1-inch ad about this in a local newspaper. And it said, editor wanted for a music magazine. So what music magazine? There's a lot of music. It could be for marching bands. It could be for harp players. I knew about jazz and rock and roll and blues and stuff, but I didn't know about that. So anyway, I made an appointment. I called, made an appointment to see him. A wonderful, wonderful man. He has since died. But he interviewed me and realized I knew a lot about how to make the thing a magazine. And then the most embarrassing moment of my life, probably, he said to me, you play guitar? And I didn't want to lose the job. I didn't want to say, no, I'm a drummer. So I said, yeah, play a little. Everybody says that, yeah, play a little. And damn sure he didn't reach back and grab a steel string guitar and hand it to me. He says, well, let me hear something. I had never touched a guitar in my life. I looked at it and I thought, it's got 6 strings and I've got 5 fingers. That doesn't work out. What the hell am I going to do? And so I did. I went pluck, 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 finger, finger, finger. And I don't know what the sound was. I'm sure it had no relation at all to any musical anything because I didn't know what I was doing. And he was a gentleman about it. And instead of laughing his head off and tossing me out the door, he said, well, okay, yeah, thank you. And he took the guitar. He didn't say a word. And I thought, I like this guy. So early on, about that time, just before that time, my background had been in broadcasting. And I had applied for a job in Sacramento with an educational TV station producing local cultural programming. And I didn't hear from them or anything, and so I had applied for this job with Bud Eastman. And the day or the next, I guess it was the day before, within 2 days anyway, Bud contacted me and offered me this job. Now, I had been out of work, and I thought, any job is really sweet, but this is in the music business, in a guitar. I'll learn how to play guitar, The next day, I got a call from Sacramento, from the educational TV station. They offered me this job producing local TV. And I thought, geez, what am I going to do? Well, Bud had called, and he offered me this job, and I had shaken hands with him and said, yes, okay, we got a deal. I was so relieved I got a job, and it's in magazines, and it's with writing and editors and musicians. This is going to be terrific. And so I accepted that with him. Lo and behold, my first paycheck bounced. And I had turned down Sacramento's TV offer, and I thought, I got a wife, I've got 2 children, one of whom is Dara, who helped with this book. And I thought, I'm going to slit my wrist is what I'm going to do. I don't dare go home to my wife and say, guess what happened? Anyway, it did work out. Bud supported me in everything I ever wanted to do with the publication. I even started Keyboard magazine, forgetting to tell him about it. What? That's how much latitude he gave me. Yeah, so he was a wonderful gentleman to have the pleasure to work with.
Right. Now, this book was just published because I'm talking to you during the NAMM 2015 Winter Show. Right. Was this book, so it is available now and people can pick that up then?
It'll be available the first week in March. What we have here at the show is like a preliminary copy. Oh, okay. It's about 90% complete, but it still has some things that have got to be worked out. But we were able to bring it here to show people like you.
Fantastic, yeah. We'll get some close-up images of that and show that as well, too.
What it consists of is we have about maybe 50 guitar players who were featured in the magazine at various times in their career. And they contributed articles, as Craig did, about what the magazine meant to them and how it affected their careers and so on. We also contacted, primarily Dara did, about maybe another 40 or 50 advertisers, early advertisers. Did the magazine, being in the magazine, did that boost their business? Well, in some cases it virtually created their business. So they wrote about how it affected them, and they sent in early ads, and we put in bigger ads as they became more successful to see the transition, from one stage of their business to the other stage. And the same with artists. We have their early photographs and we have contemporary photographs. But we also contacted about 50 of the early staff members, writers, editors, photographers, and they wrote about how they got the gig and what it was like. And and how it affected what they did, and there's a lot of humor in it. It's really a funny book.
Great. Well, it sounds like it's quite a keepsake, and it's going to bring back a lot of great memories, and also fill in, just so many important parts of the history of Guitar Player magazine. So, but that's terrific. Well, thanks very much for talking to us, Jim, and no, I appreciate that. And Craig, I know you've been kind of sitting here on the sidelines, but anything else you want to say about Guitar Player, or about being featured on that, or anything like that as well?
I'm just thrilled to be in the same room with him and to hear him tell it in real time, some of those stories that are in the book. For me, there's a intro by Joe Satriani that really sums it up for me, because what he said is what we all felt as kids, playing guitar and finding a magazine like this that really had the kind of things we were looking for, that could teach us and inspire us, and to later go through life and realize that was such a significant part of our learning how to play guitar, and how you couldn't really go on MTV back then. You couldn't, unless you had an older brother that played better than you. How did you learn the new stuff? So we all share so much in common, and so much gratitude to the magazine, and for it being what it was when it was. And if it wasn't for them, we wouldn't be here today, I'm sure.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you both for joining us, and we'll definitely make sure that readers know in March of 2015 they can pick up the book. And it is called Guitar Player, right? That is the name of the book, right?
The subtitle is The Inside Story of the First 2 Decades of the Most Successful Guitar Magazine Ever.
Well, great.
Subtle.
Yeah, it's very subtle. Yeah.
It's not bragging if it's true.
Yeah. And I'm going to enjoy, picking up a copy of this in March too, and seeing how many of the covers I remember seeing too as well.
Ads, some of the old ads and things. Oh, it's great. And you see the artists, what they look like then, like a young Clapton, and then still young Clapton, I might say.
That's right, yeah. And he's still playing great.
Oh my God, yeah. And there's other artists in there as well, just like that. There's features with Hendrix, Jerry Garcia, Joe Perry, and a country, Chet Atkins, girl guitar players, Bonnie Raitt, bass players. It's really good, a fun book to read. It's nice to see all the inside stories too. It's like looking back in the history of the golden years. Like seeing an old magazine about Harley Davidsons when they were first making them, or an old magazine about when movies were new. This was like ground zero. This was like the creative cutting edge that we all got a chance to ride on for a while with them and contribute to. So yeah, it's an honor. You'll love it. I think you'll have a lot of memories looking at that.
I definitely will have some memories. So yeah. Well, but thanks again, and want to thank everybody for tuning in. And this is Robert Kinsler with Music Worth Buying, and hope to see you soon.